Hello, everyone, and thanks for being here. We are super excited today to talk about spatial analytics and specifically leveraging spatial analytics with Snowflake. I am joined by Jason McVay. We're going to do intros in just a second, but we're going to focus on agricultural sustainability and how you can leverage spatial data and spatial analytics to help understand and study these different trends in this space. So to get started, we'll just do some brief intros. I'll turn it over to Jason and let him introduce himself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Jason McVay. I'm a data scientist at Indigo. I have a master's in science in geography from Virginia Tech, and I've been at Indigo for coming up on 2 years now.
Awesome. And my name is obviously Matt Forrest. I am the director of spatial data science at CARTO. My background's in geography. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I went through the geography program there. I've been working in the geospatial sector my entire career. I've been with CARTO for the last 6 years. And we've been doing some really interesting stuff from a technology perspective on leveraging spatial data within Snowflake and then pulling into CARTO, which we're going to show you here shortly. So a brief intro about both of our firms, turning it back over to Jason to talk a little bit about Indigo.
Yeah, so Indigo is an agriculture technology company, trying to position ourselves as a disruptor in like the traditional sense of how agricultural commodities are bought and sold. We've been around since 2014, and really the goal of Indigo is to use natural solutions to help farmers sustainably feed the planet, as well as increase profitability, reduce pollution, use resources more effectively, and leverage things that are already in the natural environment that might help drive those things. So Indigo has a couple of core offerings. The first one is the grain marketplace, which helps connect buyers and growers together. You can kind of think of that as like a kayak, how kayak lets you look for different flight options. This lets buyer or growers look at different options for selling their grains that might be closer than they're accustomed to without that technology. The other main offering is our carbon program, which is helping drive regenerative agricultural practices and get those areas where possible enrolled in carbon credits. And then we also began really as a biological company. So there are core commodity crops that are still available through Indigo. And then another part of the overall offerings is the Indigo transport, which ties really directly with the marketplace grain offering.
Great. Now I'll give you an intro about CARTO. So we are a leading cloud-native location intelligence platform, and the key part to pull out of there is cloud native. We really focus in the cloud, and we focus specifically on geospatial data. We are a Snowflake partner, and we're excited to be developing a lot of interesting things with Snowflake, some of which we'll show you today. We have many different customers, over 2,000 enterprise clients, including brands like Coca-Cola, MasterCard, DHL, Bain and Company, and Clear Channel. And we actually cover a wide range of use cases. So some of what you'll be seeing today in terms of geospatial analytics in the agricultural sector, we cover a lot of other things outside of that, things like site selection for retailers, geomarketing or targeting different customers and understanding how to run different campaigns, spatial data monetization, risk mitigation, and investment analysis. So we're excited to show you what we put together. Now, why are we here? Why are you hearing about geospatial analytics? And why are we discussing all these different tools together? Well, Snowflake, we really enjoy working with because of the number of our customers that actually use Snowflake and have data within Snowflake. Now, that varies from data that is not geospatial, of course, and data that does contain geospatial data. Now, when you bring your own geospatial data, you probably also want to know other things that are happening there. So let's say you we'll start with the retail use case. You have a store and you want to know how many people live around that store. Well, you need things like demographics, but you also might want to know different things about how many cars are passing by that. What are the traffic stats or the POIs and all these different pieces. There's a level of stuff that you want to pull together and learn about to see what those trends are. Now, once you know that, you also want to probably visualize that and see what's taking place there. And that's where CARTO really comes in. We do have data pieces for our data observatory and the Snowflake data marketplace, but we also have a technology connection that allows you to take data from Snowflake, pull it into some geospatial dashboards, and actually start to look at what's going on to understand different trends, share those insights across your organization or with others, in partner organizations or things like that. Now, how does this all work together? The first piece is that it begins with Snowflake. So your data is in Snowflake. You already have it pulled together. You're doing a lot of great things there. Now you want to share that geospatial insights out to many different users. So that's where CARTO comes in. We have a direct connector that takes your data out of Snowflake and pulls it into CARTO, and you can start to use it and do lots of different things with that, intersect it with other spatial data, and then expose that data through lots of different pieces. The first being Builder, which is a sort of point and click location intelligence tool that actually allows you to create dashboards very quickly. We're going to show you some of that today. If you're a data scientist like us, you can also do that through CARTO Frames, which is our integration into the Jupyter Notebook environment. So it's a Python library. You can install it in any of your tools that you might be using from a notebook perspective. And then the final piece is actually building complex geospatial applications directly through our platform APIs. So you can pull your data, put it into an application, develop that, and create much more complex applications through that. But like we said, it all begins with Snowflake. You start at the bottom and you work your data in, and that's what we're really excited to show you a bit about today. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason to walk through some of these use cases. We'll talk a little bit about these as we go along. But yeah, turn it back to you, Jason.
All right. So this first case study that I'll walk through here is using the it's a case study that uses the USDA's agricultural statistics as kind of the base layer. So here in the upper Midwest here, we have counties colorized by the corn acreage that's planted. And they have this data for all types of crops, livestock. Really, it's a really rich data set. And we have that in our Snowflake instance here at Indigo. And this particular use case comes from last fall, when in September there was a particularly early freeze that affected the western counties of these states. And because it was in early September, corn and soy hadn't been harvested yet in most of these areas. That usually happens a little bit later in the fall. So that put a lot of acreage potentially at risk of being damaged. And so one of the questions that came up when there's these extreme weather events is if we can get an idea of how much of the crop might be potentially affected by an event like this. So we have the plantage statistics as well as NOAA data for temperature, and really just kind of intersected those, brought them together, and put them in a nice CARTO dashboard where we could kind of visually go through and say, how many acres might be affected where the temperature got below 25 degrees. And one of the cool things about CARTO is that makes this analysis really fluid and easy, and very quick to figure that out. If 25 doesn't look good, we actually want to see up to 28 degrees. There's widgets on the side that will automatically calculate these numbers for us, as well as just show us visually what parts of these different areas might be affected. And then another thing I do love about CARTO are these pop-ups, where if you don't know your North Dakota geography very well, this will help you out and let you know the county, as well as some other individual level statistics about risk that was the result of this early freeze. So this was a really nice use case that brought together a couple different types of big data and really lended itself nicely to a CARTO dashboard, because it always helps to see these things at scale and in the place that they exist.
So Jason, this is a really good first use case. How common is it to sort of blend data that you might have in Snowflake with some of your predictions and things like that with other data sets provided from the government or other sources? And do you bring those together quite often?
Yeah, I would say that we really rely on USDA data, NOAA data, weather data, other data sets as well, like soil type. That these are surveys that have been done by the government, and that data is usually freely available, but not always user friendly. So thankfully, we have a great team of engineers and other data people at Indigo that have ingested a lot of that data into Snowflake. That makes it basically queryable with SQL, and I think makes it a lot easier to use. It's all in one place, and then CARTO plays really well with Snowflake with the connector, so we can pull that data in and quickly visualize it. So there's a lot of really great data out there, and I think years and years ago, maybe when I was in graduate school, it would have been a lot harder to get that data together quickly. Like that was usually half of the work was just getting your data. And now with the data in one place, it makes it really easy to bring it in and look at it. And in agriculture, we almost always are looking at things by county. It's just a really common way to group data. It makes a lot of sense. It's how farmers as well think about things as well. So it's very useful to summarize data at that level.
Yep, I can attest to that. Geospatial data comes in many different sizes and even more formats. So it's always tricky to get that together. But once you have it in one place, it definitely helps move things along quite quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so this was one use case, and I'll pivot here to an additional use case. This particular case is centered around the carbon offering from Indigo. And I guess one way to phrase this is there are companies that have different industrial companies that have a larger carbon footprint. A question came up last year at some point about being able to offset that carbon potentially with soil storage of carbon and regenerative practices that could actually take carbon out of the air and keep it in the soil. That's the thrust, I guess, of all of the carbon credits that Indigo is working on. So here in Indiana, we have one of the Fiat Chrysler facilities that was interested in answering a question of if they could not just offset the carbon with agricultural soils, but could they do it kind of in a local way? Could they offset all of the carbon emissions from this particular plant? How far out into the countryside, into the agriculture that surrounds them, would they have to go to be able to do that? So the data of these facilities comes from the EPA. We have some boundary data here that's also a USDA data set. And then another really great data set, these fields are colorized by a data set called the crop data layer. It's a raster layer that comes from the USDA. We have some powerful ability, I guess, to send a lot of polygons and do basically a zonal statistics and summarize that raster layer by these field boundaries to get a sense of, is this field growing corn? Is this field growing soy? Something else? In Indiana, it's usually one of those two, but there's a little bit of other crops going on. So we just have some basic statistics here of all the potential soil carbon sink, which again was based on another raster layer of soil potential based on soil type. And similarly, we can limit how far out this circle will search and what the potential sequestration of the soil is if you just go 10 miles outside of the center here. Is that enough to offset the annual emissions? So this was a really interesting project. We also have some currently enrolled carbon farmers in the area. So there's 4 already that are enrolled in our program, but there's potential for so much more. And that was really what the point of this was to demonstrate, is that this can be done at a really local scale too. So seeing that, I think, is really compelling for a lot of different industries that are looking now to start offsetting their carbon emissions.
Yes, this is really interesting. We at CARTO we get a lot of questions about sustainability and sustainability tracing of materials, and it's becoming a bigger space. One thing I heard you talk about was raster data, and in geospatial, there's many different types of data set, but the two primary types are generally vector and raster. Can you talk a little bit about the raster data and how you pulled it in and used it for this analysis?
So these are two case studies that I've worked on in the past while at Indigo. But something that I do more commonly is develop these types of dashboards where we have a lot of data that we store in Snowflake. That's really where all of our data sets go and are accessible and can easily be found. And most people at Indigo are really comfortable, especially on the data side, writing SQL queries to get what they need. But I think it's really helpful for a lot of this geospatial data or data that can be displayed spatially to actually view it and put it in context. So this is a dashboard that I built that demonstrates our parcel data, and parcel data comes from a company called LandGrid. And so they've gone out and collected basically tax assessor parcels that every county is required to have a record of. And they have standardized those and made those available. So that's one of the data sets that we've purchased. So something very common that would come up is, where do we have this data? It's by county. Not every county is digital yet. So you can see there's some gaps where it doesn't happen, where they don't have that data. So something I did was just, let's see if CARTO can handle something really, really large. You can see that there's 88 million parcels here under the scenes here. So this first level is just a county by county. The darker the color, the more parcel data we have, and specifically the owner field is filled in. And if we zoom in to this, the parcel data itself will turn on. And I have, again, colorized this data set by the crop data layer, the CDL raster layer, so another zonal statistics here. It really lets you see a clearer picture of where corn is, where soy is grown, the different types of crops, and we can zoom all the way in and see individual field boundaries. And then helpful widgets on the side that are telling you, okay, we're looking at approximately 14,000 parcels here. There's 33,000 acres of corn in this picture. And then another, like I had mentioned previously, a in-house remote sensing project that we had worked on is identifying fields with cover cropping. So cover cropping happens over the winter between planting cycles. Instead of tilling and exposing the soil to air, some farmers will plant a cover crop, which also will help sink carbon into the soil, keeps the soil from blowing away in the wind, a lot of beneficial things like that. Identifying locations where people had practiced this is really interesting to Indigo, and very interesting to our sales team, our marketing team, of like, can we find these people? Can we find people that are already doing regenerative practices and reach out to them?
Yeah, I think what's interesting here is that just the amount of data that's going into this, from the parcels, the crop cover, the planting in between seasons, all this data is being merged into here. But it's not just for different use cases around agriculture and planting. You're actually using it for your own internal teams to help them sort of target and find farmers and properties that'd be beneficial to work with Indigo. So it's really cool for me to see all of that come together, and then also just looking at some of the scale of this. We're looking at property parcels across a huge chunk of the country. Being able to take a high level view and zoom down into that is really unique, and I think that's one of the cool parts about geospatial visualization, is being able to do all that together. So
yeah, and this project in particular would not have been possible without the CARTO Snowflake connector. This parcel data is pulling directly from our Snowflake instance, and I really wanted to see what CARTO could do as far as finding the upper limits of the size of data it could bring in. And this data is updated every quarter, so I have it set up to sync, so it's always fresh. It's always the most recent data we have available. And I'm not sure there is another way I know of that I could have visualized, 80 million unique parcels all at once. So that's one of the strongest things I think about how CARTO and Snowflake are playing together to make things that I want to do possible.
Great. Well, thanks for showing all these and going into the detail. It was really great to walk through these use cases. Definitely come check out our virtual booth. You can reach out to us if you have more questions, but thanks for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your sessions.